And now, here is your pandemic news report. Welcome, everybody, back. Welcome back to Pandemic News Report. And today, we asked the question, is Bill Gates gearing up for Pandemic 2 with new vaccines being placed inside little patches instead of put inside of needles? All right. Before we get started, we definitely want you to check this out. All right. We want you to check this out here. We'll be putting a link in the description. And you need to look at this report on Bill Gates. This was a few years ago. And it was saying that Bill Gates predicts upcoming disasters, but he funds the disasters he predicts. You guys need to check this out right after you check us out here at the Pandemic News Report. We'll put a link in the description so you guys can check this out. It really goes in deep about how Bill Gates really gets down and does things. And once you see this, you'll have a clear picture, or a much more clearer picture, about Bill Gates and what he's into and what he does, how he does it. So when he's out on the internet, on the video, saying a lot of things, you'll be able to be like, yeah, okay, whatever. You'll be able to pinpoint things out. So be sure to check this out here. All right. We'll put a link in the description. Bill Gates predicts upcoming disasters, but he funds those disasters that he predicts. So it makes him look like he's some type of all-knowing person. But this really breaks down a lot of stuff about him. All right. So be sure to check that out. The link will be in the description. All right. So again, the question is Bill Gates gearing up for pandemic number 2? All right, with new vaccines being placed inside little patches. All right. So with that being said, let's get into it. All right. Let's check this thing out here and what's really going on. All right. So again, Bill Gates planning pandemic 2 complete with new vaccines being administered from a little patch. You know, and the questions always come up, you know, what does this guy always have to do with vaccines, and why he's so interested in vaccines? Has he ever taken any vaccines himself? You know, somebody needs to press him on that. Has he taken any vaccines himself? Constantly wanting to get into this vaccine situation, right? So the vaccine racket is losing steam. So billionaire eugenist Bill Gates has come up with a new design for vaccines. It's almost like he's like the person that gives the green light or something. Like nobody else can give the green light. Even scientists and people who create these vaccines and companies, it's like you got to wait on him. No, who is he? Mr. Microsoft computer, now vaccine enthusiast. So this billionaire eugenist, Bill Gates, has come up with a new design for vaccines that involves a little patch being slapped on a person's skin. In a recent appearance on a news channel or a TV channel in India, out of all places, Gates was asked about the future of vaccine manufacturing through his eyes. Remember what I told you? Be sure to click that link in the description later on. We'll be adding that link after this broadcast. All right. And you need to really check out how Bill Gates gets down. All right. So Gates was asked about the future of vaccine manufacturing through his eyes based on the current state of technological and healthcare advancements. Here's what he said. We make sure for all these vaccines that there's enough capacity, that there's competition, so the prices keep going down. And we will have new vaccines. We'll have a TB, tuberculosis vaccine, malaria vaccine, HIV vaccine. And speaking of HIV, I thought that was kind of taken care of. Fauci was a part of that as well, for those who don't know. I think that was back in the 80s, right? So Fauci was a part of that, if you guys didn't know that. So Gates continued by rambling about the Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19 vaccines that were unleashed through Operation Warp Speed, explaining that for the next pandemic, quote, we need to make them have longer duration, more coverage. And we're going to change, instead of using a needle, to use a patch. Gates added about the newly envisioned technology. All right. Whether from a needle or from a patch, poison is still poison. It is important to note. Injected poison is arguably worse, as it bypasses the body's natural defense mechanisms, but surely Gates has thought of that too. And will make the patches just as, or perhaps more, toxic than their needle counterparts. So there were some people that chimed in on Twitter, so we're going to read those as we continue down. All right. So from Lady Shadowban, she says, Bill Gates, we need to make vaccines have longer duration, more coverage, he said. And we're going to change, instead of using a needle, to use a little patch. All right. So related to this also is, late last year, organizations run and influenced by, keep that in mind, run and influenced by Bill Gates, partnered with a biotechnology company to develop needle-free Eucharist, I think that's how you pronounce it, Eucharist-like mRNA vaccine wafers for administration under the tongue. And, that bears the question, why are they certain people are so strongly want to get people to take mRNA vaccines, man? Why are they finding so many different ways to try to figure out to give to people? Put it in a wafer. We did a report where we talked about them putting it in lettuce, salads, right? And he's talking about putting in patches instead of using the needle. Why are they so hell bent on everybody getting vaccines and finding various ways to get people to take it? It's crazy, right? So Gates wants to change food too. In the future, Gates also wants to strip farmers of being able to grow their own food. Imagine that. Why would he want to do that? Why he want to get into the food and bother farmers and stuff like that? He's a wicked MFer. All right. At the recent COP28 meeting of elitist globalists, Gates unveiled a strategy involving the use of innovation to absolutely, quote, solve the problem. Here's another post from another person called Wide Awake Media, excuse me. And Wide Awake Media on Twitter says, unelected globalist technocrat Bill Gates at COP28, the issue of food systems and how with climate change, a lot of farmers aren't able to grow their crops, which is a tragedy for them. We'll talk about using innovation to absolutely solve the problem. All right. They're just, I guess, reiterating what Gates said. So at one point, Gates actually used the term, Gates actually used the term pandemic 2 to describe another future COVID-like event that he and his partners are already preparing to capitalize on with their latest biotechnological developments. All right. Remember, click the link in the description because that I'm gonna read this part again. That's gonna set the stage for what you guys will see in the video with the link. All right. At one point, Gates actually used the term, quote, pandemic 2 to describe another future COVID-like event that he and his partners are already preparing to capitalize on with their latest biotechnological developments. So he's looking to make some money off of this quote unquote pandemic 2. All right. There is kind of a lesson in this to learn, except you guys don't need to be devious about it. You need to pick up that game about him saying stuff like that, because this is how they start making their money off of these bad situations. So you see how he's doing it, but you can also do it, take the game from that, because there's game in that. There's learning in that particular comment, and you can also capitalize on things as well. You just got to keep your eyes and ears open for a lot of things. All right. And it will kind of open you up to opportunities. Okay. So another person here called Euphoria on Twitter says, where did Bill Gates study to get his PhD in public health and medicine? All right. Good question. For him to be into the computer situation, all of a sudden he wants to get in the vaccine game, if you will. All right. By the way, did you know that the Latin translation of core, C-O-R, and ona, as in the word corona, core and ona, the two parts of the word corona for coronavirus mean heart attack? Did you guys know that? Core and ona, C-O-R and O-N-A, core, ona, corona. The two parts of the word corona for the coronavirus means heart attack. This is surely not a coincidence, as many of those who took the corona jabs suffered heart attacks or some other form of heart disease. All right. According to another publication, Gates is like a worse version of Anthony Fauci. All right. And I think there's a book by Robert Kennedy regarding Fauci and Gates and a few other people as well. You guys might want to look at that and start reading up on that. A lot of information on it. All right. So I guess, quote, I guess we'll call him America's most untrusted non-doctor, Winger added. This is Winger from another publication. Either way, Gates is at it again. All right. And yeah, he's at it again. All right. So the needle, this is from another person tweeting from Twitter, Jamil Baptiste Berglund. The needle-free vaccines could be distributed via the robot mosquitoes that Bill Gates created. Interesting. All right. Very interesting. Bill Gates should be arrested for crimes against humanity, for starters. One angry commenter wrote about these latest developments. Quote, here's another quote, stay away from medicine, wrote another about how the Western healthcare model is a big pharma farce that propagates poisons made by the likes of Gates and his cronies. Just amazing, said another person. Why isn't he in prison yet? All right. So will there be another pandemic on the way? Compliments of Bill Gates. All right. Stay tuned, because, the pandemic news report here, we'll keep our eyes on it, and, we'll definitely report it out to you guys. All right. So again, we'll be putting in the description a link, like I said, which will detail a lot of Bill Gates' activities and his behind the scenes, how he moves. So be sure to click that link. All right. So you can actually see, and it'll give you a greater perspective in regards about him and what we're reporting here right now today. All right. So you guys let us know what you think about this report here. Bill Gates is apparently saying as he's gearing up for a pandemic too. You know, he's used the words in a conference or something like that, or meeting or interview, stating pandemic two. And supposedly he has something to do with, instead of using needles now, he's having something to do with putting vaccines in patches. All right. And let's go back real quick. Because, like I mentioned before, you know, what is it with this guy, and what is it with not only him and others wanting to find different ways for people to take vaccines? You know, why is he and others wanting to constantly get people so vaxxed up? And the question needs to be asked: has he ever actually taken any of the vaccines he wants to have created and administered to the world? Pretty much. You know, like I said earlier, what we read earlier here is that there was another related story to him, stating to Bill Gates, stating this sometime last year, that organizations run it and influenced, you know, watch the wording, influenced by Bill Gates. In other words, you know, he was influencing them through money and other means, partnering with a technology company to develop needle-free Eucharist-like mRNA vaccines, vaccine wafers. So you have wafers. He's apparently involved in creating vaccine wafers. And then we reported some time ago about the possibility of putting vaccines in salad. We also reported about them trying to put, like, speaking of nanoparticle vaccine in the air so you can inhale it. They spray it out in the air. The airplanes will spray it out and you ingest it that way. And then now he's talking about the patches. So what is it that they just constantly want you to be vaccine up, and they find and trying to figure out all these different ways to do it? So one person don't like the needle, you could take a wafer. If nobody, there's some people that refuse to take it at all, no problem. They'll spray it in the air and you have no choice but to inhale it. If that doesn't work, we'll put it in your salad. We'll put it in your lettuce, your tomatoes. We'll put it in your food, right? Why they constantly want you to take this stuff? You really need to sit down and think about that. I mean, it seems obvious. You know, you keep hearing about this population control and mind control over the years. You know, that might be the answers to why him and others are constantly wanting to do this. And we reported about Moderna scientists saying that the mRNA vaccines are not safe, right? You have all this information, connect the dots, put those pieces of the puzzle together to form what the answer is, right? So again, we appreciate y'all, man. We're going to get on out of here. Be sure to support the Pandemic News Report. All links will be in the description. And be sure to check it out. All right. We're going to bring that back on the screen one more time. Be sure to check this out. Okay. We will be putting the link in the description. All right. The link will be in the description. Bill Gates predicts upcoming disasters, but he funds the disaster he predicts. Just like in the report we're telling you about today, in this one here, he was already talking about another pandemic. So he's always predicting stuff, but he has something to do with these things in the background. But if you didn't know any better, you'd think, man, this guy just happens to know everything. How does he figure this stuff out? Well, if you guys would check this out, you're going to get a lot of information to wake you up on a lot of stuff about this guy. All right. So with that being said, we appreciate y'all. Be sure to support the Pandemic News Report by going to pandemicnewsreport.com. All right. Be sure to go to pandemicnewsreport.com, where you can also see our other news reports, pathogen related news and events. All right. Be sure to go to pandemicnewsreport.com where you can get all news related, pathogen related news and events. All right. We appreciate y'all. We're going to get out of here. This is the Pandemic News Report. We're out. Peace. And now, here is your Pandemic News Report.